All right. Well, can you increase the volume, Victor, on this? Can you increase the volume? Yes, thanks. It is 6:30. That's when we begin these meetings. Welcome. My name is Lynn de Freitas. I'm a board member of the Capitol Hill Neighborhood Council. I've been asked to introduce the speakers, help manage the meeting so we don't go overtime if we can help it, by David Shearer, who's the chair of the board of the Capitol Hill Neighborhood Council. Welcome to all of you that are here present and those who are online. Great to have you here. We appreciate your support. Our goal is to have each of these chairs filled at the next meeting. So if something about this meeting that you think can be improved, by the way, please let us know. We're looking for ideas. But our aim is to make the meeting informative, relevant, sociable, and effective. These meetings are intended to help make our neighborhood better. Sorry about that, folks. So we honestly are very open to your input. So go to the, I'm not sure exactly the link, but chnc-slc.org. Real easy. Capitol Hill Neighborhood Council /SLC, initials CHNC. And go on the link to leave feedback, and we'd love to hear about it. Randall Smith, he's our treasurer. Are you prepared to give a 1-minute report or less?
Yeah.
Come on up. The board members and treasurer on the board. Come on up. Okay. Well, actually, for our Zoom participants, it works better if you do it from here.
So we've got in the checking account $2,754.42, having just recently received the check from Salt Lake City ACE funding, which I've forgotten what the initials stand for, but it's money that we applied for, and that was $2,000, which is deposited that this month, and then we had in savings $2,803.58. No other activity.
Thank you. I wanted to mention one thing. We're grateful to have the support of Lee's Market. Rich Costin is the general manager there. He provided refreshments today. Thank you very much, Rich. So anytime, starting now, you can dive into the refreshments, water and cookies. I guess that's it. Thank you. We're going to start now by having updates from various officials from the city and the state. It looks like Chris Wharton isn't here yet. I don't see him. Oh, you are. I beg your pardon. And then there's, oh, and are you Marie? No, sorry. Marie Stewart isn't here. Then Hannah and Jennifer might be joining us online. We'll see what happens. Chris, come on up. Thank you.
Okay, hey everybody, I'm Chris Wharton, your city council member, and just wanted to update you that we have made it through the budget process for the normal city budget, and now we are in the process of talking about the bonds. There are 2 proposed bonds. One is a general obligation bond that would come before you as the voters, and ultimately you'll decide whether to approve or not approve that bond, but the council has voted to put that on the ballot for this coming November. Mostly that is for the biggest chunk of that, well, all the parks, the biggest chunk of it is to go towards changing what used to be Raging Waters into the Jordan Regional Park. It's a big area of city land, lots of opportunity to do things there, but we want it to be a regional park that has lots of different amenities and different attractions. So you'll find out more details about that as we get closer. Another part of the bond would be to put at least $1 million towards parks, one or more parks in each of the 7 city council districts. And the one park that we're looking at putting the most in our district, District 3, would be Warm Springs Park. And then some other funds from the bond would go towards Allen Park, which the city acquired last year, street from Westminster. And then, so that's what's in the GO bond. The other bond is a sales tax bond that the council will decide whether or not to do. That won't come before the voters. But that is, we have some bonds that are retiring that we use sales tax money to bond for. So we have bonding capacity that we can use. We have a really good, city has an excellent bond rating. So now is a good time for us to reissue bonds. Those would also mostly be for parks and city facilities. Right now, it's proposed that the Warm Springs plunge building would be included in that. The proposed amount right now is $6 million for Warm Springs. And I would like to, I've been working with my colleagues to try to raise that a little bit. Hopefully we can get Warm Springs, the building, not just to a point of being stable, but a point that people could use it, go in there, and we can try to start working with community groups and or a public-private partnership on what the long-term use of that building would be. But right now, because it's in such disrepair, it's pretty hard to take people in there and have them envision something really exciting for the space, because we want black mold and the roof's kind of falling in. So we want to get rid of that. And we are also working on our CIP process. So last year, you remember there was this group sponsored a CIP application for traffic calming, which I was able to get funded at the full amount. This year, we don't have any specific CIP program recommendations from District 3 that have been recommended for funding, but I'm happy to hear if you have any thoughts about any CIP applications. So those are, sorry, CIP is Capital Improvement Program. So any request that's $50,000 or more to go towards a capital improvement of the city. Other than that, that's probably going to take us through the rest of the summer, although I still am working really hard to, by the end of the summer or early fall, have a public ordinance out about improving xeriscaping and revisiting artificial turf. So right now you're not allowed to have artificial turf. We've had that in place for, in your front yard at least, had that in place for over 10 years, and artificial turfs come a long way. There's in terms of environmental quality. And so I think it's time to revisit that, because that could be a great water saving tool for people if they're going to use it in a way that makes sense and isn't going to cause harm to the environment. Anybody have any questions about what the council's working on or anything like that? Okay, great. Keep your eye too on the, hopefully by the end of the summer, we're going to have the State Street project done as well. The first phase of that is completed. And I know that it's huge burden on all of us on Capitol Hill, but it is a 100-year-old pipe with water and sewage. So really don't want to take any chances with that. It's pretty important, and it's almost done. So thanks, bye.
Is there a date that will be completed? Did you say that? I'm sorry.
There's not like one specific date, but they're planning. So the first phase, I think the water pipe part is done. They're working on the second phase. You can go to State Street waterline.com, and it'll tell you all of the details about it and when each phase will be done. But it's supposed to be substantially completed by September. Thanks. Oh.
Question. On that, as far as traffic flow, I have requested that they keep the double left-hand turn lane southbound on State, eastbound on North. Keep that a double left-hand turn for the duration of the construction, because the traffic backs up through to going up morning, and if they left it double left hand turn all day, it would just ease the flow of traffic.
Yes, so, because so it's the city's line, that we own the line, the water line and the sewage line, but the state owns the road. And so they get to decide how they want to divert people on their road. And so we've tried to, we made sure that we unblocked one of the turn lanes on Main Street and tried to make other accommodations on city-owned roads, but it's pretty hard to get UDOT to change on their roads. But I will give that feedback to them, and if we, to the extent that I do have any pull, I hope it'll result in something. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your question. Thanks very much, Chris. Now, let's see, has Detective Marie Stewart showed up yet? No? Apparently not. So then we'll move on to Hannah Barton. She's relatively new to the mayor's office. She's here to talk about a few important topics. By the way, welcome. I didn't realize you're a 25 plus Zoom viewer, so welcome to all of you. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Barton. I'm the community liaison from the mayor's office. Sorry, just trying to set this up. Okay, I just have a couple updates from the mayor's office. I know that this isn't just in District 2, but 2100 South is going to be reconstructed in 2024. And a survey just opened up last week to get residents' feedback on it. I know that's kind of far away, so a lot of you might not use it. A lot of you frankly might avoid it because it's kind of a pain to drive on. It's going to be reconstructed from 7th East to 13th East. So that survey can be filled out at 2100southslc.org if any of you are interested in filling that out, even if you just want to complain about the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. I also wanted to mention an event coming up this Saturday, the 23rd at Liberty Park, laser night lights, kind of in lieu of any city fireworks. That'll be a fun event with music and food trucks, so feel free to attend. That runs from 8 to 10 p.m. I also wanted to provide a quick update because I see that Ivan and Kristen are in the audience. We had a productive meeting with
the government and terrorist organizations that hold them captive. But some families say
sorry. We had a productive meeting yesterday talking about the concerns about fireworks, specifically on Ensign Peak, but I know that's also an issue kind of throughout the areas. We're also close to all these grassy mountainsides. So we had a productive meeting with police and fire and public lands, their funding office as well, to make sure that we feel hopefully prepared and feel like there's a good plan going on into the weekend of the 24th of July, because I think that's all on our minds. So I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has questions. Sure.
What is the plan? I have a question there.
What is the plan?
What is the plan that's productive?
Yeah. So there, we have some strategies put in place. We know that this isn't perfect, and we're hoping to get to a place where we have a plan every single year that's consistent. We're ready to roll out. Being that this is so soon, we did, I don't want to speak for Christina, but I believe a permit has been filed with the transportation department of the city to hopefully close down a street, or at least one side of the street, so that parking is restricted and there are barriers in place. What the fire department is really looking for is 20 feet of clearance under the International Fire Code to make sure that they can get a fire truck up should they need to. And of course, they want to make sure that fire hydrants are easily accessible if they need to use them. And so part of that, additionally, we'll be partnering with compliance, the parking enforcement, to make sure that illegal parking is not happening, whether that's in front of fire hydrants or double parking or parking in front of private residence driveways. And so there will be, sorry, Christina, I don't want to speak for you or steal anything, but there will be 5 off-duty police officers that have been hired by the Ensign Downs Neighborhood Association that will be at 5 different spots throughout the neighborhood for I believe 2 hours of the night. And then before the trail closes at 10 p.m., they will be hiking the actual trail and making sure that people are aware that it's closed and clearing people off of the mountain. And obviously that whole time looking for any illegal activity, including lighting up fireworks for illegal parking.
That people park on both sides of the road. I live up there and I tell the man when real quick. And a car barely fit down the street. People are actually parking on both sides of the street. We're not talking like 100 people, we're talking like thousands. thousands of people, it's absolutely out.
Yeah.
And giving them a ticket isn't going to help. The fire truck, the ambulance needs to progress down those streets, so.
Certainly. So the question is about the illegal parking on both sides of the street, preventing the fire truck from going up. A two-pronged approach to that. First, the permit with the transportation department to hopefully close one side of the street and have barriers consistently placed so that there's no parking on one side of the street at all. And those barriers will then obviously need to be pulled out of the way should a fire truck need to come up. But that will hopefully address the double parking specifically on, now I'm forgetting the name of the street, Enzyme Vista. Thank you.
If there's no parking allowed on that street to begin with.
Sure.
Why can't there just be barriers to physically stop cars from parking there?
Sure, and that, the hope is with those 5 officers as well, they're kind of strategically placed throughout the neighborhood. The hope is that they will keep an eye out, and if they see any illegal parking happening, they will catch the person when they're still in their car, because we do understand that giving a parking ticket doesn't fix this issue immediately. So the hope is that those police will understand. Certainly, and this is an ongoing dialogue. We want you all to know that we understand these concerns and we're here to support you. And this is something that we'll continue to talk about, because again, this is likely not a perfect solution, but we want to get to that point where we have a plan to roll out here. So I'm going to stick around for the rest of the meeting, so happy to talk to anyone about your concerns and making sure that we incorporate all of these thoughts as we try to come up with a plan solution. Any other questions? Yeah.
Decision not to allow us to close our street. The decision to not allow us to close our street sounds an awful lot like putting an ambulance in the bottom of the hill instead of putting a fence on the top of it. I wonder if after the fact, we can all regret the fact that we're not able to actually restrict entry into high-risk areas after fires happen.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, it's tricky just because of the placement of the trail at the top of the neighborhood. That's a public trail that everyone has access to, residents, neighbors. And so we want to make sure that people can get up to that trail and go on hikes with their families or watch the fireworks, from the top before it closes at 10. So we understand that there's a tricky balance there. This decision was made by the events permit review process, the board. They have a group of people that gather together to make that decision, including police and fire, and take all of those considerations into their decision. And this is something that fire, they're very aware of, very willing to commit resources to, and I think they feel good about this plan going into the weekend. But as I said, happy to take any feedback at the end of the meeting, and I'm sorry because I know we have a packed agenda. Yeah.
Is this a new thing you're doing this year for that part of our neighborhood, a new approach to?
So I know that neighbors have really championed this issue for a few years, and I'm just going off of secondhand information that I've been told, but in the past, it was block party permits that were filed to close off whole streets, and this year, 9 block party permits were filed. Unfortunately, that's not a permanent solution, and I recognize that the city, like that precedent should not have been put in place, because those permits are for block parties, not for preventing parking, not for fire prevention events, whatever you want to call this issue that we're dealing with. So it was just determined that wasn't a permanent solution, and we needed to come up with something better.
This is your best plan.
For now, and I recognize that we're operating on limited time here, just with the 24th this coming weekend. So again, we're happy to keep working through this. And I, plan to have meetings in the fall and spring so that next year we're not even talking about this in July. We all know what's happening and we all feel good about it.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
And thanks for your questions, folks, to Hannah about that issue. May I just suggest, Hannah, that would you, now that's the Ensign Downs area we're talking about, right? Just to be clear about it. Would you mind, how should we do this? I'm soliciting input from you guys after the fact. So after July 24th, would you pay attention to what's going on there? And then after the 24th, the next day, emails somebody. It could be me, or it could be, who'd you rec? Oh, the Rodriguez's, Christina. But you all know Christina's email address? If you live in the area, you probably do, right, Christina? email her your feedback about how things went that day. Would that be okay, Hannah? Are you the best person in the city for Katrina to contact with the feedback?
Yeah.
So pay attention. If it doesn't work that well, let's figure out why it didn't and do it better even next time. Great. Hannah, thank you so much for coming and for giving us that report. Now, let's see. Jennifer Dailey-Provost will not be joining us today, I just heard. And Detective Marie Stewart hasn't shown up yet, I don't believe. So we're about on schedule. Luckily, those two didn't come. That's kept us on schedule. I shouldn't say that. Would have been nice to have them, of course, but we're on schedule. That's good too. Oh, I just realized, is Lisa Demons here? Ah, you are here, yes. Oh, yes, see your little patch. Lisa, come on up. Lisa's from the Salt Lake City Fire Department, and she'll be addressing at least one issue of concern for the neighbors up in Ensign Downs again, and that is the fact that there's only one egress, one evacuation route for that whole neighborhood. And that's a concern, of course, if there was a fire or some emergency that required that road to be closed, or that did close that road, or a fire heaving across East Capitol Boulevard, where would the residents go? So Lisa, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
I'm not going to be stretched to say I'm going to address the issue of one means of egress out of Capitol Hill, because there is one means of egress out of Capitol Hill, and as far as I know, the city doesn't have any plans to build another means of egress out of Capitol Hill. And it's not just Ensign Downs that's affected by that, it's North Cove, it's everybody who uses East Capitol Boulevard to get in and out of the neighborhood. And so what we do have is an emergency action plan that we've developed both for Capitol Hill and the avenues, anticipating a City Creek fire. Many of the elements are the same for an Ensign Peak fire, just where we've identified certain choke points where we'll have police officers directing traffic. We have an evacuation committee that's starting in August to talk about things like the order in which we do evacuations up in those areas. We have the ability now, just in the past year, I think, to send out, do geofencing text messaging relating to evacuations through a program that we call RAVE. And so that is the program that sends out these automated messages, and we can pre-program the zones and say, okay, we want zones 3, 6, and 9 to evacuate, and to send that message out to those groups. So those are all things that we're in the process of planning. And just know that when we're fighting a fire up there, your means of egress is also our means of egress. And so, you know, we have an interest ourselves for the safety and well-being of our firefighters and maintaining that egress, whether it be with our fire trucks or police officers helping us clear that area. It's something that, you know, not only do we want the residents to have a way out, but your firefighters also, you know, have a deep interest in how we protect that area. And just know you're not the only ones in the city who have that egress issue in the wildland urban interface. Operative Park is similar. Up in the upper avenues, there's a whole neighborhood that only has one road down, I think, Caribbean Canyon. You know, if you're hoping for another road to be built in, then I would say that Councilman Wharton is probably the person that you need to start dialogue with that, because it will take significant funding, and City Council and Mayor's Office really wants to have the ability to prioritize those projects. In the meantime, we encourage you to come to our website, which is slc.gov/fire or slcfire.com. You can get there either way. And right up sort of towards the top, we have a box that says Ready, Set, Go. And that provides useful information for everybody about how you can prepare in advance and during an evacuation for a wetland fire. So lots of tips on there about how to mitigate fuels around your house, to protect it better, to make it less likely to catch on fire, to encourage your neighbors to do the same thing. same Ready, Set, Go page, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a hyperlink that says contact us to get a home evaluation or home assessment. And we will schedule one of our on-duty fire crews to come to your house and walk around your property with you and talk to you specifically about what you can do on your property. And I know a lot of people don't have time to do their own yard work these days. Everyone's busy. So if you have a landscaper, we can also come up and meet with your landscaper and walk through your property and talk to them about what would be beneficial things to do around the home so that you and your landscaper can come up with a plan together on what to do. So, are there any questions specifically on?
You said you were going to be
So it's not just in August. I think that's just the beginning of the discussions of the committee. You can have your city council chair ask our fire crew, which I just saw Station 2 got dispatched on a fire about 5 minutes ago, and so they won't be here tonight. But when that would be your crew normally, I think, who's coming to your city council meetings. And so just check in, have your chair check in with that crew or with the chief's office and say that, just like today, you mentioned you'd like to talk a little bit about grass. And so I got that message at a time, and unfortunately, not a lot I can do about an alternative needs assessment. Yeah, just let you know what we're working on.
What about your communication as fire department with the entity of the city to ensure that you have proper access to neighborhoods that on holidays to fireworks? Is there any communication between the two entities for that, or
Either entity being the police department or
the city and the fire department?
So we are part of the fire department and we partner. So for example, if you have a request for the road closure, I believe that streets contacts our prevention bureau or vice versa. I feel like our fire prevention bureau was involved in the conversation relating to that street closure. So at that point, when they're coming up with a plan, then the fire department, through our fire prevention bureau, will provide input on what they think they need or what is necessary up in that area. I know 2 years ago, was it, that there was the fire up there?
Yep.
So, a lot of traffic going back and forth, but actually from our perspective, we didn't feel like it went that poorly. We had light engines that responded first, and even though there was a lot of congestion up there, I think that our crews generally felt like they were able to gain access where they needed it. But we rely pretty heavily on all of our fires and all of our events on PD to provide traffic control for us, or if that's not available to us, then we'll just pull one of those big engines off and block off the road. And, leave a space for people on egress, but usually the engineer, the driver will stay with that rig and direct people around it.
A follow-up on that question, as you mentioned, we more than triple the population of our neighborhood on big nights like the 24th coming up. Is there a limit or a capacity for, say, the trailhead? Because it's a small trailhead, and as you know, for any building, it has a capacity limit. As walking to this building, this one, there's a capacity limit, and that's for safe egress. Is there such a thing for a trailhead that's in the middle of an urban area like this one?
Not as far as I'm aware. So I don't know if Parks manages that trailhead, so I don't know if they have any sort of limitations on the number of people who can utilize it. But we don't have, I'm not aware of any fire code that addresses limitations like road traffic limitations, which is effectively, I think, what you're talking about there.
Well, my concern is the trailhead specifically.
Yeah.
The 4th of July, when officers asked people, that they told people that park was closed, we had a stream of like over 200 people just coming from the some point you would think, okay, it's overcrowded.
Yeah.
Would
Yeah,
that
but
be
there's no
something to
fire
consider?
code relating to outdoor, open space egress. So in the building, there are only a certain amount of people who can make it out of the door when you have a fire at one time. And I get that there are only a certain amount of cars maybe that can access the street at one time. And I don't know if that's something that the city wants.
These are hikers, not cars.
Right, but I'm assuming they came in cars.
Well, but these are people coming down, walking.
Yeah.
More than 200, and there's no other road other than the
Yeah,
one.
there's no fire code or fire issue with that. It would be an issue for parks or open space in the way that they.
I spoke about the land. See on that road, there's no, when on it.
Well, I was gonna say that maybe there should be, but I don't think we have time today. You've raised a great question, Ivan. Thank you very much. I think it should be talked about. I mean, at some point, you can overwhelm a building or an outdoor space to the point where it's unsafe. And the question is that what's happening in your neighborhood? Maybe it is. So I recommend that you reach out, perhaps, if you don't mind, Hannah, to the Parks Department and address this question to them and see what they say. But I think these folks in that neighborhood, Ivan and all his folks up there, Christina, deserve a response to that question and a serious consideration of that possibility of creating a limit, a capacity limit for that trail from the head, I guess. I'm not sure how that would be done exactly, but it should be addressed, seems to me. Does that take care of your question for now?
Yes.
Okay,
I would
thanks.
say even Science Park has a limit of how many people get into the park, so
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
it's along the same lines.
I understand the situation correctly, but just recently, the decision was made, the private structure using block party closures was not an appropriate precedent. So someplace between police and streets and fire, the decision was made that that would not be true. I live on a ditch home. And I'm here to tell you that the traffic on our street were more than triple or quadruple that night. From our street down the hill, there's a very large hill of very dry grass. It will not take anything to set that off. We have people parking in long lines on the no parking strip every night. Much of the night. You can tell them to go. So the night of the 24th and the night before, that street will be completely flooded. If someone throws a cigarette, that whole hillside's going to go down. And you're telling us there's no limit from the fire department on traffic in that street. There's no limit from the police on traffic in that street. The limit that's been used in the past was disallowed days ago. And the idea that that's not a good precedent, but that sometime in the future we'll do something about it. Tuesday morning, if our houses are burned, we will not feel good about that. This is a bad decision about past actions made late in the process, taking away all protections just before the event. Could fire say we're going to limit traffic in that street so that we could get an engine down there if need be? Because otherwise, I'll tell you what, you won't be able to.
I think, so I know that fire was a part of that decision-making process. So it's not a division that I'm in or was deeply involved in the conversations of. I'm aware of the issue because I manage some of our wildland reporting and education stuff right now. But, if people are illegally parking, that would be likely a code enforcement from the police department, not a fire department issue.
They have not done it in years. It's
Yeah.
5 complaints.
Right, so I understand that, but just from the regulations that the fire department works under, we don't have a means to regulate the amount of traffic. I think it needs to be a community plan.
I think we need to hold the questions. I mean, the issue has been raised and it's important. Here's my recommendation. Between Hannah and Chris, I'm not sure who I would dump this on. One of you two will take it. For starters, I'd like someone to be in your neighborhood on the 24th or the Saturday,
Saturday.
the 23rd. Chris, can you commit to getting someone, a team, maybe 2 people up there? Maybe, I'm not sure how this would be done exactly, but for them to see for themselves the chaos that's being reported happens up there annually or every 2 times a year, at least, something like that. Yeah, okay, so that's twice a year, basically, is that right? Yeah. Chris, would that be reasonable to get an evaluation team up there to spend a couple hours, maybe early on, and then come back closer to 10 o'clock, and just take an inventory of what is happening up there?
Yes, I think it would be reasonable to have people there. My understanding is that there already is a plan to do that.
Oh, good.
As a council member, can't commit. That's getting people to an area is an executive decision, not a legislative decision. So I can't commit anybody other than our council staff there, and they're probably not going to be very helpful.
You could go up there.
I will
just
be up
kidding.
there.
You could be a reporter too.
People, firefighters and outreach teams have been up there the last 2 years, as well as previous years. But I think I definitely understand the concerns, and I think these are 100% valid concerns. I think just to give a little bit more context, though, there's half of the city is on this goal of the East Bench, and all of that area is sensitive to fire. And there aren't enough police and firefighters to shut down every single road that is adjacent to wilderness, that is in a dangerous area. That's why we have additional restrictions on where you can have fireworks, when you can have fireworks. And that's why we have additional officers and firefighters on staff that night to respond quickly to emergencies that happen. But there simply isn't enough people to staff when it's being requested to block off every street that is next to an area that's dangerous.
Why was the system of citizens written that the wish of the city this not just where you live?
That I don't know the answer to.
Does that strike you as unusual?
It does. It does strike me as unusual. It does strike me as unusual. So what I'm hearing though is that, we have a permit process that's been put in place for block parties. That part of that process allows this committee to make those decisions and make those judgment calls. And for whatever reason this year, the committee didn't feel like that was the correct way to go. I understand.
Well, let me interrupt. Thank you, Chris, for your input. I really appreciate it. Hannah, are you in a position to help maybe 2 people up there to do a more or less official evaluation session of what's going on up there on Saturday night?
I'd be happy to help with something.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we're going to have a discussion, but it's super important. I realize that. Thanks to those that have weighed in on it.
Maybe we'll take pictures to have.
Perfect idea. Yeah, send them to Christina, maybe, any photographs that you take that night, collect them and send them off. Okay.
And I just want to emphasize one more time that the work you do before these holidays come up around your property works. So pick up these pamphlets on your way out that I left on the table over there and get a little bit more educated about how you create defensible space around your home from a fire, because it makes us pick that home as one of the ones we save. If there are several homes threatened, we'll pick the ones that are savable, not the ones that aren't. So because we have limited resources, like Councilman Wharton said, we can't put out 10 house fires at one time. So we're going to be looking at the homes that we can protect, and doing this work ensures that yours is one of them.
Thank you so much.
Also, I'm going to give you all my cell phone. I will be around because my phone number is 801-910-6795. I'll give it to you as you leave the door too, so you can call me anytime. I will be around. I'm just at the bottom of this hill. So happy to, I'll be up there to look at it earlier, and then I'll be available if you need to call. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris.
801.
Oh, and one more thing, I also just wanted to mention, for the first time this year, we've learned of somebody in the city, and it happens to be on Capitol Hill, who was denied insurance because
of the landscaping around their home and the wildland fire threat. And so that is another consideration. They put a lot of money into making improvements around their home and got the insurance. But that may be coming for people who are moving into the neighborhood or getting new insurance. So it's another reason to put a little bit of work each year into that.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. Thanks for you coming and just talking about that. And let's get a better understanding. Chris?
Just saying that my phone number again, over here, 801-910-6795.
Thank you, Chris, for offering that up. Well, we were on time, now we're behind schedule.
Sorry.
No, it's no one's fault. It's okay. It's an important topic, so I'm not complaining about it, but we do have another very interesting item on our agenda. It has to do with water. That's a big deal in a lot of regions of our country and the world for that matter, but particularly here with Utah Lake and Great Salt Lake, a lot's going on, a big concern. So we're going to hear from three people. Lynn de Freitas, I say that more or less correctly? Executive Director of Friends of the Great Salt Lake, and then Rick Maloy will follow her. Rick is Water Conservation Manager for Central Utah Water Conservation District. And then Stephanie Duer will talk to us. She's a manager of the Salt Lake County Utilities Department. So, Ben, thank you.
You ready, Jordan?
So,
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and be a part of the community discussion of where we are, our collective responsibility in the watershed, and the collective stewardship responsibility we all have on behalf of Great Salt Lake. I'm Lynn de Freitas, the Executive Director of Friends, and take it away, Jordan. I'll just let you read these. Next. Okay. Friends of Great Salt Lake is a membership nonprofit organization. We were founded in 1994. Our mission is to preserve and protect the Great Salt Lake ecosystem through education, research, advocacy, and the arts. We have a 4th grade education lakeside learning field trip program. We have a fall and a spring field trip season. We've taken thousands of 4th graders in the 5 counties surrounding the lake out to Great Salt Lake, many of them for the first time to have an experience to walk in the lake, look at brine shrimp, and talk about how Great Salt Lake is hardly a Dead Sea. We're going backwards. Okay. And we do a lot of outreach, and you can go to our website and check out Instagram and find out what we're up to. And please be a part of that, because we all are in a place of historic, cultural, and environmental hemispheric significance. And advocacy is an obvious component of our mission, since the public trust resource the Great Salt Lake is something that basically should be managed in perpetuity for the people of Utah. And as such, there are values that need to be protected. There are avenues for public engagement to file a protest or to have a conversation about a particular land use, things like that. So advocacy is a vital part of who we are and how we operate. And certainly the arts, we realize that not everyone is as excited about the science of a saline system as many of us are, but expanding the reach to the artistic expression that is inspired by Great Salt Lake is a part of our program that we extend to engage artistic contributions through our Lamborn Prize. And you can read more about that on our website. Next. So the inspiration for the founding of Friends of Great Salt Lake came from the Mono Lake Committee and National Audubon. Mono Lake, which is a sailing system in the Eastern Sierra Basin of California, was being drained dry by Los Angeles. The river inflows were being diverted, and essentially that system was depleted by about 40 feet of elevation. Its salinity doubled, and the ecosystem values that are part of Mono Lake are very significant, much like Great Salt Lake. The fact that it is also a hemispherically important ecosystem for migratory birds. So the work of the Mono Lake Committee and National Audubon through various means ended up in the California Supreme Court, and they challenged the right of Los Angeles to essentially dry up a public trust resource that belonged to the people of California. And they prevailed with their challenge, and out of that came a settlement agreement to identify a range and elevation for that ecosystem that everyone would use as a target to bring water back into Mono Lake to address those ecosystem values. With prevailing on their Supreme Court challenge and settlement agreement, in 1994, they had a conference, and the founding fathers and mothers of Friends, and I am not among them, although I joined the organization soon thereafter, went to the Mono Lake Committee conference, and at that conference, they were asked, why don't you do for Great Salt Lake what we did for Mono Lake? Realizing the fact that Great Salt Lake is next to a growing population. Mono Lake, 250 miles away, but the implications are there, and the opportunities to engage and educate people in the watershed about our responsibility are there. So we were founded based on your inspiration. Next. And through various surveys that we've conducted with the public, we've identified major threats to the ecosystem. Climate change, obviously, but certainly our growing population. We are, what, 2.5 million, with projected growth to be doubled by 2050, 2060. So we'll be the size of Philadelphia, living next to a saline system that is, as you well know, is going through tremendous pressures from climate change and water diversion and the lack of water. Water quantity and quality development on and around the lake. The inland port is a great example of an issue that we need to pay attention to and has implications for impacts to Great Salt Lake. And then education, people not understanding the true value of what Great Salt Lake is. Next. Great Salt Lake is in a hydrologic basin of 21,000 square miles. It's fed by 3 rivers. So we've got the Bear up here. We have the Ogden Weaver River and the Jordan River. And essentially, those are sources of life to Great Salt Lake. Great Salt Lake is a terminal lake, which means that there's no outlet. The only way that things leave the lake is through evaporation. So what doesn't evaporate is sequestered in the lake bed. And we're experiencing science right now with the exposed lake bed and the declining lake that is indicating that there are things in the lake bed that contribute to air quality and health impact issues. Next. I think I need to be sensitive to time, but again, you know, for the second most driest state in the nation, in a desert state, we have the reputation of using a tremendous amount of water, and so we have room to move in making improvements, in recognizing changes in our behavior, so that we can actually act like we're in a desert and make water available for the lake as well. And we talked about increased population projections. But the perception by the water law, the state of Utah water law, the prior appropriation water law, is that the lake is not considered a beneficial use. There are ecosystem values like brine shrimp industry and mineral extraction, certainly the habitat for millions of migratory birds that matter. But the perception of any drop of water that goes to the lake is wasted is, it's a heavy lift, although we're making progress, so that's good. But again, approaching land use, and certainly our water years that have been disappointing and very disturbing, because our snowpack is a prime source of inflows to the lake if it gets there. Next. And again, water is the lifeblood of the Great Salt Lake ecosystem. Next. This thing is the Great Salt Lake elevation matrix, and it came out of a comprehensive management planning process that the Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands in the Department of Natural Resources does for sovereign lands that they have jurisdictional management responsibility. Every 10 years, they do a comprehensive management plan. This is from 2013. And essentially, this was a way to visually identify along the top all of the different values, be it islands, navigation, various industries, habitats, salinity, things like that. And with different elevations along the left side here, you can see based on where green is good, where those ecosystem values mostly prevail. So the sweet spot here between these two red lines is 4195 and to 4205. Certainly we're down here now with the recent record low. But it's a way to think about the values of the lake, elevation, and how do we think about sustainability. Next. And this is the, I call it the Candyland map of Great Salt Lake, because the elevation of the lake in this image is 4,200 feet above sea level, which was great because a great many of these values are sustained at that level. The lake is divided by 5 counties, divided among 5 counties. It has 10 islands when there's water to make the islands islands. But there are conservation properties, there are duck clubs, there are wildlife management areas, there are national wildlife refuges, and a great variety of things that are a part of that system. Next. And you probably read about and recognize the fact that we hit a new historic record low this past July of 4190.1. So there's a lot of work to be done, and water is basic subsistence value for that. Just a few more, I think. Next. Okay. Again, health implications from an exposed lake bed. We've learned from other systems, Owens Lake and Eastern Sierra Basin of California, what happened when that system was drained totally dry. We don't want to go there. We know better. Next. But we also know that we're going to be getting warmer. And, we're all going to have to work together to accentuate community, accentuate the fact that we live in the desert, and do our part to sustain the values for the quality of life that we expect, but also sustain Great Salt Lake. Next. A lot of legislation, and perhaps another time I can come back and I can elaborate in more detail on different ways that are being addressed to create tools to address Great Salt Lake's declining lake. Next. So a lot to think about, but we are family. Why not? And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Lynn. Rich? Good luck.
Thank you, and Lynn, that was a a wonderful presentation. We didn't consult before, but it is a perfect segue into exactly what I want to talk about. But next slide. Just a little bit of background. Who is Central Utah Water Conservancy District? We manage about $3.5 billion in infrastructure. We treat not a lot, but we do treat water. Most of our water that we deliver is untreated water, but we treat about 100 million gallons per day. We serve 1.5 million people every day. Most of that is along the Wasatch Front. About 180 miles of canals, tunnels, and pipelines to bring the water to you. 400,000 acre feet annually. An acre foot, when we start talking about quantities of water, that becomes the easiest metric. So I'm going to talk about acre feet a lot. That's essentially if you had an acre of land, a foot deep water. It's easier than billions and trillions of gallons. So 565 billion gallons, though, is what we store in our reservoirs. Next slide. So this is our service area right here. We are the primary diverter of tributaries on the Colorado River. So the water that you consume has Colorado River water in it, which is a very important topic right now. Everybody knows, or probably most of you know, about the issues of the Colorado River basin and the challenges there. We divert, or Central Utah Water provides about 161,000 acre feet of Colorado River water each year. To put that in perspective, the state of Utah, all of the upper basin states divert about 4.5 million acre feet. So we're kind of a small fish in the use of Colorado River water. The lower basin states use somewhere close to 11 million acre feet of water. So what we divert is a small portion, and we've reduced it. So in 2020, we used 3.5 million acre feet of Colorado River water. So we're already making cuts. A lot of that doesn't get conveyed very well in the news. But the way we take that water is, again, on these tributaries along this side of the state, and it comes through Duchesne County, basically into Strawberry Reservoir, that we can bring that water down through Spanish Fork Canyon and actually convey it across kind of the fault line of the Wasatch Mountains across the point of the mountain and into Salt Lake County, where Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy, and then Salt Lake Public Utilities delivers that water. Next slide. So we have some goals as a district, conservation goals. We want to use our own water efficiently. However, we're just kind of the delivery system. So we don't have any end use customers. All of our customers are large water districts and cities. Go ahead and next slide. So our vision for conservation is to use our limited water resource efficiently to responsibly support our communities now and into the future. So we really, our focus is supporting communities, making sure that people use their water efficiently, and then we have a lot of public facing programs as well. Next slide. So a little bit about some other goals. The state has some regional water conservation goals. If you look at the goals here in the Salt Lake area, the Salt Lake region, 11% reduction. We measure things, the other measurement, unit of measurement that we use a lot is gallons per capita per day, or GPCD. That's if we take the total deliveries and we divided them out amongst the base population in the area. Now, this is a very tricky number. It gets compared a lot. And I will tell you right now that every time it gets compared, the comparison is flawed. So if you look at Southern Nevada, they actually subtract all of their return flows. So if we subtracted our return flows to the Great Salt Lake, which is a beneficial use, then our numbers would go down. So we don't subtract any return flows. We also account for outdoor irrigation. Many areas in the West do not include that in their numbers. So anytime you see a comparison number, just disregard it. Next slide. but we use it to compare against ourselves, and that's the most important thing. So real quick, Salt Lake City, this is their data. Sorry, Stephanie, this is maybe, so 310 gallons per person per day, now 183. So you guys are doing a great job. There's a lot of conservation happening. And that's a 12% reduction from 2015. So if you're looking at how, a good metric for how well Stephanie is doing and how well you guys are doing, things are good, but we need to do more. There's always room for improvement. Next slide. So we know there's a need for improvement. What are we doing about it? Well, we have done an analysis and we say we need to spend about $2 billion. This is infrastructure money. This is on the same level of new infrastructure, just on conservation alone to meet our goals by 2030, an additional $7.5 billion. This is real money that we have to spend in order to meet our needs. Next slide. What are those needs? Lynn talked a little bit about population growth and the strain that has on our system. You can see this is the Wasatch metro area. This is kind of the trajectory that we were on. We run out of supply somewhere around 2030. That's bad. If we can conserve water and improve that trajectory, that puts us out much further. I do want to talk about these lines just very, very briefly. You can see things go down. That's because there's this thing called climate change, and with climate change means longer growing seasons, hotter temperatures, a greater need for outdoor irrigation to maintain our landscapes. There is this buffer for potential water supply. I don't look at that as potential water supply. Really what that is conversion from agriculture. So your local agriculture has water. We don't necessarily recommend getting rid of that, or we don't advocate for that one way or the other. Ultimately, it's up to the landowner to decide. But that's this kind of some of this variability over here, just so you can look at that and see that. So next slide. So what is the highest impact for water conservation? We already talked about the climate change and how that impacts. Also, we know that we receive the lowest amount of rainfall in the summer. That's also correlates with the highest amount of irrigation or outdoor water use. Next slide. Most people get this wrong. This is, if we look at the state of Utah, 44% of our municipal water use, so the use that's within our cities, goes to outdoor residential landscaping. So I always see people pointing the fingers. They say, well, all the churches or all the schools or all of the parks use all of the water. It's very, very false. If you look at commercial landscapes right here, it's a sliver that was too small to put on the graph. Institutional, which is your churches and schools, again, sliver too small to put on this graph. So that outdoor water use, the low-hanging fruit, and why we have so many programs targeting residential landscapes is because of this right here and this. Turf grass needs about 30 inches of water a year. Kentucky bluegrass, the most common turf grass here, needs about 30 inches of water a year to stay alive. Through mountains of water check data, we have found that the average consumer uses nearly 60 inches, so almost double what they need on their landscape. So when we talk about low-hanging fruit, it's irrigating our turf efficiently is the first step, and then where we can, reducing our turf, and the governor has said this a lot, if the only time that you use your turf is to mow it, let's remove it. So next slide. So we do have some programs available. If there's a one website takeaway for my presentation is Utah Water Savers. You can go and you can apply for different rebates. We have a smart controller rebate, a toilet rebate. Next slide. And we have two semi-new programs that came about the end of last year. Flip Your Script, Local Scape Rewards, they pay people to remove certain areas of their landscape or do some re-landscaping. Next slide. This is one home that applied for this program. They were able to get some funding. They're still lawn, but this home right here uses half the amount of water on this landscape. So next slide. We also have a landscape leadership grant, which is for commercial, schools, parks. We want to provide funding for those landscape conversions as well. Next slide. We have new programs coming next year as well. We know that the programs that we implemented are difficult maybe, or need a little reworking. And we also know that costs are going up. Things are harder to do now than they were a year ago. So we're probably going to be paying more, incentivizing more, and streamlining the process. So next year, I probably wouldn't start a landscaping project in July anyways, it's too hot, but if you are, I'm happy to help you out. But next year, it should be a little bit easier to do that. Next slide. There is my contact information. If you have any questions, please reach out. We want to make sure that you're successful in water conservation, whatever that is. Water supplies are strained, and they will probably continue to be strained. I think we're now starting to realize that this is probably the new normal. We're moving away from this term drought, and we're talking about aridification, or the general drying of the area. That means that these swings are going to dip into dry seasons more often than wet seasons, and certainly the patterns show that. And so water conservation is important today, and it's just going to be more important as we move along, especially if we want to maintain qualities of life. And that's all I have, and I will turn it over to Stephanie. So thank you.
Folks here and online, we don't have enough time for Stephanie to give her full presentation, but we're going to give her just a few minutes to.
You said 5.
Yeah, that's good. That's what I meant. 5. And then she's going to come back next month. Stephanie's from the city, and I think she'll have a lot of great ideas to help us reduce our water consumption. But we'll have her back next month for full presentation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Duer. I'm Salt Lake City's Water Conservation Manager, and I was told I have like 3 to 4 minutes, so I'm going to be really fast. So I'm going to move through some of this stuff. Jordan, next. Yeah, next. Okay, stop. So what I want to share with you tonight is a couple of things. One is I really appreciate being up here with Lynn and Britt, and I think we should do this more often. But also I want to point out that some of the numbers Rick was sharing with you about water use represent our numbers for the state or their larger service area. And Salt Lake City service areas numbers are really different, and I'm so proud of all the work we're doing. So this is information we gathered from at the end of last year during the drought. And what you can see is this is the response to the drought last year. Now it looks like there's a lot of water use, but what those numbers represent is actually decreases. So everything above that line that says 0, I'm going to try not to hit someone in the eye with this. This line is 0. So everything above that is a reduction. The only group that actually increased use was hotels and motels, which was weird because they were all supposed to be closed. So I don't know how that happened. But look at this. So our parks and municipal sites reduced water use by as much as 32%. Single family residential, 23%. Right on, good job. So everyone did a really good job. We haven't finished the numbers for this year yet because we're still in the middle of the irrigation season, but that's a really wonderful response. We need to keep this going. Next slide, Jordan. Okay, so one of the things I want to share, and I'm not going to go over all of this, is right now we're in this drought, but as Rick pointed out, it's really not a drought anymore. Like this may just be our way of life. So our conservation goals that we worked through with a lot of planning processes, indicate where we need to be. And it's pretty much where we are right now. So this is good to know. But you can see the conservation master plan on our website, and I've got the link on that, I think, farther down. But so I'm going to go to the next slide. So this is information we actually provide through the Metropolitan Water District of Salt Lake and Sandy to Central Utah. And what I want to show you here is that this is one of the goals that are set by Central Utah. It's a contractual agreement. And it affects the cost of the water we purchase through the Central Utah process. This is our trend line. Now, the other thing I do want to remember to tell you, we provide, Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities provides water not just to Salt Lake City, but also to Cottonwood Heights, Holiday, or a good part of Holiday, and Mill Creek. So all of our customers are really important in us achieving this goal. So this is just, I don't want to make sure I hit Jordan there. That would be really bad. This is our new goal. This is the new state goal. We've already at this point hit that state goal as the new regional goal. Jordan, next slide. So I just wanted to share this with you. This is our trend line for residential water use. Now, gallons per capita, Rick explained what that was. And the other component of it that people don't think about is gallons per capita includes water that's used for industrial, commercial, and those purposes. So it's all of that water that's produced and delivered and divided by a census population. But we also look at water use by individual sort of customer classifications like single family or multifamily, or even right now, we're looking at water use by financial institutions, tattoo parlors, laundromats, because we have been able to disaggregate our data that finely. So it's pretty, well, for a data geek like me and an analyst, it's pretty darn exciting. I can see you are all very excited about it too. So that's okay. Residential water use, you can see generally the trend. Now 2020 was an anomaly. We had an increase in residential water use, but everybody stayed home. We had a corresponding decrease in commercial water use. So I'm not worried about that. That's not a bad thing. And you can see already for 2021, it was starting to drop. And I assume that that's going to go down more as people return to normal work patterns and school patterns. You can also see that this is indoor use. It's fairly flat. This is outdoor use, and there's a general trend down. Again, in 2020 and 21, there was a really big interest in doing gardening at home because everyone was staying at home and they're growing more vegetables. So it's not a surprising increase, but it is already starting to trend down, and we're seeing really good levels of conservation. Jordan, next slide. We've got this information for a broad number of sectors. A lot of commercial sectors, apartments and stuff, so I won't go into this detail now because we don't have time. Next one. This is our aggregate. And just as the thing to know is looks really uniform, but our aggregate sector, we've divided this out into 18 very specific categories of businesses. So we have this much more refined, and we have some classifications that do a better job at conservation than others, and we're developing a program to work with them. Because though, like Rick's information provided, that most of the outdoor water use is going to residential uses, we know that in Salt Lake City service area, about 12% of our connections are commercial customers, commercial and industrial, but they represent nearly 50% of all of our municipal water use. So it's really important that we engage our commercial customers if we're going to be successful long-term and sustain our water use reductions. Next slide. Next slide. We've got a lot of programs going on, and I want to share just a couple with you. Right now, you still have time to get a water check. Water checks save water. We know this scientifically and for a fact. We have a lot of data about it. If you go to www.cwel.usu.edu or just to our conservation page, you can find a link to get a water check. The other thing we're going to be doing is there's a lot of talk about grass, and grass takes a lot of heat. But the truth is grass doesn't cause overwater use. People cause overwater use. Turf doesn't turn on sprinklers. And there's actually a lot of really smart grasses out there. There's a ton of research going on right now, both regionally and nationally, on better turfs that require less water and less inputs, and actually have a lower footprint than anything else you could put out in your landscape, including things like artificial turf. So we're going to be starting a lawn seed sale next week. I'm really excited. This grass could use, it has a little bit of bluegrass in it because it germinates really well, but it's mostly a fine, tall fescue blend. And it uses 30 to 40% less water, at the very least 30% less water than a standard lawn. It also requires less mowing and it doesn't require fertilization. A really good choice. It's a nice, and if you combine that with reducing your lawn size to a reasonable area, then it can make a lot of sense. This is one of our utility facilities, and the old lawn area was here. We reduced the lawn area by a little over 50%. We planted, that's our new turf trade grass, and we've already reduced water use on this site by 50%. Some of the other things we're doing is we're working on water maps, which is a program that is allowing us to assess and compare landscape water need to actual water delivered on a parcel by parcel basis. So basically address by address. So we now have data that I can look at that tells me exactly what properties are overwatering, and you're going to get a letter. It'll be a nice letter. It'll be a nice letter, but we'll be able to let people know exactly how much they could possibly save, which will be a really wonderful thing. And we're hoping it's going to be helpful so that you know how to make better choices. And we're developing programs around that so we can help the community address overwatering, which is really the issue. And this is even if you didn't change your landscape. Everyone has this capacity to conserve more water in their landscape than we are all doing. And really, we know from this data now that most every household can help us a little bit at the very least. We're doing a lot of work with commercial customers in terms of understanding their water use, and we're starting a commercial audit program, which will be an interior audit. We'll be working with a variety of business types that will be doing internal audits, looking at their water fixtures and their processes to help them improve their water efficiency. And in Central Utah and this division, the State Division of Water Resources are partners in that project. And thank you very much. And we actually just gained another partner, and I can't announce it yet, but it's really exciting. So we'll be able to expand that program to economically qualified households to also participate in the audit program. So we're very excited about that. Next slide. This is what you're doing right now. This is the most important slide. So this is the year 2000, which is what Rick showed on his previous slide. This line here is a rolling average of the last 3 years. So in this case, it's 2019, 20, and 21. This is what we're doing right now. So right now as a community, we use 17 million gallons less a day than we did over the last 3 years, under the last 3-year average. And that amounts to about, Tamara, help me remember, is it 1.8 billion gallons? Yes. So what that amounts to is 1.3 or 1.8? 1.8 billion gallons saved this year alone. 1.8 billion gallons saved. Good job. Keep it up. We need to just keep under this line. And by the way, we're in stage 2 of our drought. And the reason we don't have to go to a higher stage is because our drought plan allows us to look at both supply and demand. So when you guys are our partner in reducing water use, we can avoid restrictions, which is a great thing. That's just not what I want to do. But your actions help keep us below our water supply levels right now, which is really good, which means we can keep water in our reservoirs for next year. And I think I'm done.
Well, we have had an interesting, informative meeting today. Thank you all for coming, and a round of applause for all our presenters today. One more. Thanks for your time and for all you do to help make the state and the city run better. We really appreciate it. We had a couple more things planned, but we don't have time. So the historical review that Scott Christensen prepared that will be presented next month, that's about this little cabin structure just a half a block south of here. It's been recently restored and some interesting things have been done, but the history of that place is fascinating. That'll be next month. And then next month we'll have more time for Q&A. If you have anything that's really you want to share, you can do it after this meeting, which is, I think, going to end right now, unless there's any reason to another issue or question? Oh, Ashley Anderson is running for the school board. I promised her a minute or so before we close off the meeting. Thanks for reminding me, Ashley.
Hi, really super fast. I've met a lot of you. My name is Ashley Anderson. I'm running for Salt Lake City School Board. The primary just ended. I think maybe Jordan can put in the chat my website, which is ashleyforschoolboard.com. So if you didn't vote in the primary or you're new to the neighborhood, you can check out information about me and issues in our Salt Lake City public schools. If you did vote in the primary and you're looking for something like a yard sign or to make a contribution, that's also on my website. Again, it's ashleyforschoolboard.com. There's a lot going on in Salt Lake schools right now. If you'd like to talk, I'll leave as quickly as Safi asks us to leave, but I'll still be here. So thank you so much for the minute, Glenn.
Thank you, Ashley. Thanks for your willingness I think that's about it, folks. Thanks again for coming. It's great to see you all. See you in 4 weeks, the third Wednesday in August. That's the 17th. Take care, all. Have a great month. I'll be sure to make a cookie for watch for care.